The traditional paths are home to small heritage treasures that bear witness to the prosperity of an era. The houses of the Huerta have become the greatest exponent of the transformation of a society linked to the cultivation of the land. Some of them were born when they were annexed to the refuge towers. Others as farmhouses for agricultural exploitation. Subsequently, they rose to reflect the prestige of their families. The names determined by their owners, or in relation to their status, were predominant, such as El de Conde or La Princesa. The properties were adapted to the needs of the economic activity of the moment. Oil mills were incorporated for pressing olives and obtaining oil. The production of wine meant that most estates also had a wine press and cellars. And the preservation of certain products required warehouses and drying sheds. Windmills also characterized the landscape of Alicante region. The farmers took the grains to the flour mill, which used the water from the irrigation ditches as a source of energy. The splendor of the Huerta during the second half of the 19th century led to the proliferation of country estates for the Alicante oligarchy. These estates stood out for the stylistic style of their architecture and ornamentation, but above all, for their gardens. Geometric and landscape patterns were used under the watchful eye of the botanist. Flowers, palm trees, and aromatic plants intermingled with the vernacular architecture, full of bucolic corners with ponds and fountains. The Ansaldo Tower House is a representative example of the typical constructions of Huerta de Alacant. For centuries, it's enjoyed great popularity due to its strategic location. Its name comes from the surname Ansaldo, a noble family from Genoa that enjoyed great prestige in the Alicante aristocracy from the 17th century onwards. The house has a large entrance hall with two semicircular arches, in which a stone cistern stands out, which collected the rainwater and the water from the Ansaldo stream. Next to the hall was the kitchen, pantry, and service quarters. The upper floor was designated for the lords of the estate. Ansaldo also had a wine cellar. The wine was made in the wine press, where the grapes were trodden to obtain the must. The semi-basement was used for the wine aging process. Just above was the drying room and warehouse, disappearing in the 20th century to expand the private rooms. The terrace of the tower once had a dovecote with a gabled roof, which has now been dismantled to recover its original appearance. Some of the buildings that have disappeared are the stables, the barn, the pond, or a threshing floor, as well as important cultivated land, without forgetting the hermitage, very common in many of the characteristic estates of Huerta de Alacant. In one of the inventories of goods seized during the Civil War, an oil mill with a stone roller, a crusher, several manual presses, horses, and pigs were registered. Its last owner, Manuel Montesinos Gómez, descendant of the Ansaldo family and mayor of Alicante in the 40s, lived there with his family until the 70s, when he sold the property to a real estate developer for the construction of 612 social housing units, the Ansaldo Park. With the degradation of the neighborhood, the deterioration of the property went at an atrocious pace. In 2014, the tower underwent its first rehabilitation, and it is in 2020 when the whole building is restored, recovering all of its splendor. Today, Ansaldo collects the interpretation center of the Huerta thanks to the infinite work of Isidro Guades Ripoll. His impetus, struggle, and interest in preserving the heritage values of Huerta de Alacant and disseminating its popular customs is present in his work, being a valuable cultural treasure and faithful testimony of our history.